Alright, we're live. I'm laying on my prana mat, and I figured while I'm laying on my prana mat, I want to talk about something I was contemplating during my yoga. I just finished my yoga. And it is, I will try to gear it semi about for beginners. We've talked with you here on this channel about astrology, and today I want to talk about compatibility and relationships and how to know if someone is right for you. Now, before we begin, I want to also have a disclaimer that you can never know just from a chart all the answers to your questions. You will never completely know if someone is right for you just from a chart. That's why I kind of don't necessarily believe astrologers who do very concrete readings, because they're you have to kind of have an intuitive factor to be a good astrologer, and you also have to understand that nothing is fixed. None of reality is fixed. So in order to understand relationships, you can look at many aspects of the chart. You have to open a synastry chart for relationships. Synastry chart, if you go on astro.com, there is, in one of the drop-down menus, there is synastry. You can apply your chart and the person in question's chart. That can be obviously a partner, love interest. It can be your parents. Of course, you have a relationship with them, and anyone else, business, etc. Today I'll mostly talk about love, but that can be applied, just you understand how it would be a little tweaked so that you understand its application. And the things, I'm not gonna go into every single detail. I want to give you just the basics of how to look for compatibility in relationships. First, you will need to look at your moons. I would say maybe first that would be the best thing to look at. If they are forming an aspect, the moons, you don't want a very heavy aspect between the moons. If you do have a very heavy aspect, that's also something that can be softened by the rest of the chart. But if you have moons that are either in conjunction or in a positive aspect, then that is the first sign of good compatibility. Now, you can also look at the moon aspecting the other planets, moon to the ascendant and moon to the sun. The moon shows your emotional needs, what you feel comfortable with. In a relationship, you want to feel safe and comfortable. For different people, safety means different things. For Taurus, Capricorn, that would mean that the person is there, solid, they're there for you. That is not the case for Sagittarius moon. Sagittarius needs to be understood, to be acknowledged for their beliefs. A moon in Cancer would need to nurture and feel closeness and just emotional closeness with the other person. Every moon needs, an Aquarian moon would need freedom in order to feel safe, would need to be their own person in order to be safe. So every person's safety is a different, it's a different place, and you have to look at the moons and see if they're compatible, either with the other person's moon or with the other person's sun, ascendant, maybe even Venus, in order to see if they will, if the other person will be able to meet your emotional needs. Say your moon is in Aries, you may be act childishly if you're expressing the lower qualities of Aries. When you get mad, you just kind of throw a tantrum and you act like a child. You have your emotions are not very mature, and even if you express it in its highest self, it's still, there's going to be a childlike quality to you, but you're going to more tap into the innocent rather than the childishness. And I should put here the prana mat below so you know what I'm doing. I'm acupuncturing, acupressure. I'm doing an acupressure session. Alright, so you look at the moons, and that's where you see if you emotionally can work with each other, if you're gonna find safety, if you're gonna have find in this other person what you're looking for from a relationship. That would be the first thing to look at. Another thing I really like to look at, and I don't hear it as often from astrologers, is the moon house placement. When you put both of your charts in a synastry chart and you see where your moon falls in the other person's chart, that is a good indicator of if you will ever have compatibility for living together. If you have if your moon falls in the other person's fourth house, this is a sure sign that you two can live. Nothing is a sure sign, but you get what I mean. It's a sure sign that you two can live really harmoniously together, given that you look at all the other aspects as well. But having a moon in the other person's fourth house is a really good aspect for creating a home together, for living together. If you have a moon on the other person's 10th house, that's also good, especially if you work from home, because the other person will support you at home in your career. They're gonna strengthen you. That is the first thing to look at, moon compatibility. If the moons form a trine, that's also a good sign. If they're conjunct, that's a great sign. If your moon conjuncts, as I mentioned, the other planets, that's a great sign. And if it falls in a strong house for you, that's a great sign. Another compatibility aspect, I like to look at Venus, usually and Mars. If Venus and Mars are conjunct the other person's sun, that does not show you anything about emotional needs, but it does show you that there is quite a bit of charge between the two of you. There is sexual charge, there is fire between the two of you, and that's a good thing in relationships. Now, the Mars aspect you have to be a little bit careful about, because in its lower form, it will lead to fights, to tension, to just kind of clashing with each other. So Mars can be a little tricky, but if you tap into the higher expression of Mars, say two people are really enlightened, then you two will just go forward, ideas, energy, you will move forward in life. And if you have disagreements, that will just propel you forward, because you understand the higher expression of Mars is not people agreeing with each other, it's the opposite of people disagreeing with each other and growing from that. So Mars is a good aspect to look at, if especially Mars conjuncts the Sun is good. Mars and Sun is good because it shows good sex, but maybe the one person's ego, the Sun person, and the Mars may have a little bit of disagreement in other aspects, but in a higher expression it will be a good thing. Venus Sun, it's great. Venus Sun is amazing, because if especially the Venus is the woman and the Sun is the man, then the Sun, or the masculine and feminine energy I should say, then the Sun person would see the Venusian person, the Sun would see the other person as beautiful no matter what. It's just, they're gonna be taken by her. They would think she's phenomenal, even if, you know, the rest of the world finds her normal or whatever, he's just gonna see in her just absolute beauty. So that's very important, obviously, in relationships. You want that Sun-Venus positive aspect, and of course you can't hit all the positive aspects in most relationships charts, so you just want to have a few and then work with the others. And some are really hard to overcome. There is some aspects that are just, people try and they fail very quickly, because there is aspects that are just, you need a little bit of harmony and flowing waters in order to grow. If you're constantly struggling in your relationship, that obviously will damage your other life, maybe your self-growth, like life, career life, achieving your dreams, because you're putting too much energy, too much psychic energy into your relationship that's struggling. So you want compatibility, you want to flow with ease. Every relationship has challenges, and even if you don't, you will hit challenges, because everything is an ebb and flow, but you don't want it to be a struggle. You don't want a relationship that requires like tons and tons of work, and the work never gets done, and it's always like hard to communicate or hard. So you want to find those things. So for communication, which is not as important for relationships, you will look at the Mercury aspects. Say you have Mercury-Venus aspects, especially, I love conjunctions. If you have Mercury-Venus, that's amazing for creating art, for hearing each other, for communicating, for connecting with each other on subjects about creativity and art and so forth. Aspects between the suns are good. Aspects between the sun and moon, beneficial aspects such as trines, conjunctions, and sextiles, those are also pretty good, because you see that one person's inner self would be fulfilled by the other person's emotional needs. Sun, the masculine person in the relationship, and Moon, the feminine, is also really good, because she will really give him that femininity that he needs in order to have a complete, you know, masculine, feminine feel, because we all need to feel the masculine and feminine in all aspects of life. We can't be just one. We are both, and we need the healthy side of both. And different people are different percentage of both. Like there is more masculine females and less masculine females. So we all need to have both, and kind of in a healthy balance in order to feel really balanced. You don't want to sway too far in one side, because then it becomes a little too much of one thing. You want to have a little bit of both. Say if you're way too feminine, then you don't have enough fire in you to do things. And you either look for it in another person or in the opposites of your own chart, in the unconscious aspects of your own chart. That's what relationships are. They bring up the unconscious parts of us. That's why your ascendant is the opposite to your descendant. Your descendant is your relationship. So you can look there too. If you have planets in your 7th house, that indicates what you're looking for in a relationship and how you express relationships. Generally, if you have Mars in your 7th house, that can indicate that oftentimes the relationships are stormy, unless you befriend your Mars, unless you find ways to work with your Mars as an energy source rather than quarrels and war type of energy. That's why we have to understand all the planets in all of their expressions, so that we can work with them and grow through them. Another thing to look for, well, if you for the sexual aspect of relationships, usually always Venus-Mars. If you have Venus-Mars aspects, Venus conjunct the other person's Mars, that's a phenomenal. It doesn't get better than that aspect. The two Venuses, if they conjunct, that shows a lot of the people will have the same sensibility about what is art, what is music, what is good music, what is inspiring art, what they kind of find pleasure in. So those two are gonna have wine together in galleries and just enjoy life, just to the fullest. To just go to in nature. Venus can appreciate nature. Go sit in the park and just feel the sound of the trees, etc. So that's a really good aspect. But really, the first aspect to look at, as we talked in the beginning of the video, is the moons. That's where your most deepest emotional needs come in. That's what you need. Also to look at your descendant. Your descendant is your unconscious needs, and your 4th house is how you're at home. If your 4th house is, say, Aries, you want to feel in the other person some Aryan qualities, so that when you're at home, they kind of fulfill you in that way. They can be with you on that level. If on your 7th house, on the tip of your 7th house, which is your descendant, you have a particular sign, you have a Scorpio, then in relationships, you're not as much a Taurus, which is your ascendant. In relationships, you're far more Scorpio. You need that intensity, you need that depth, you need that connection on, and also that the intensity of transformation. That's what a Scorpio would look for. So you need in the other person something that has a very strong Scorpio energy. Ascendant in the other person in Scorpio would be great. A sun would be good, or even the Venus would be good. So you want to see that compatibility. I think I'll keep it at that. Just look at the moons, look at the Venuses, look at the fourth house, look at the descendants, suns together, or ascendants, sun, all of those are good. Mars, Venus, that's the more, that a Mars Venus relation connection won't keep the relationship going, but it will give it, it would give it a lot of beauty and a lot of passion, basically, but it won't make it last just on its own. For it to last, you want to see, oh, I forgot to mention that if you have some conjunction to the other person's north node, that is a really good sign that the relationship will continue forward. If you have if you have something in the south node, that might lead to you two recognizing each other initially. You to immediately go, oh, I know you from somewhere. Like I've met you before in my life. That doesn't mean that you necessarily have a strong future together just because you have a strong past or past lives. But north nodes are a good sign for moving forward in life. That's it. There is a lot more to relationships, obviously, but that is it. I think I will continue with my pranamat session, and I'll cut this video short. The pranamat is so intense, you guys don't even know.